Good morning and welcome to a miserable day at St Mary's Church in Essendon in Hertfordshire. Yesterday I was at work all day. The sun was out, shining bright, not a cloud in the sky. Today, wet and windy, typical. But anyway, today's video is a little bit different from what I normally do. I'll have to duck under cover because, as you can hear, the heavens have really just opened. So I'm kind of ducking under the little roof here. But these lot of headstones you can see here, I'm over my shoulder. I've been through so many churchyards and cemeteries, and I've often looked at these older headstones here. I don't flick around. These kind of older headstones, which I always kind of walk past and never take too much notice of. I thought I'm going to find one with an interesting tale to tell, and I have done, and that is what today's video is about. Now, I'm going to turn around in a minute, if this rain stops, and I'm going to go to a little plaque on the wall, and that will give you a clue as to what this video is going to be about today. So let's do that. Just turn you around, and we'll go and have a look at this plaque on the wall. Right, it's just over here, somewhere. I did see it, and I did read it. Now, it's not really crystal clear. Here it is. Right, it says, "In devout thanksgiving to Almighty God, this stone is placed here in commemoration of the reopening on Sunday, the 2nd of September 1917, of this chancel vestry and organ chamber, after the rebuilding necessitated by a Zeppelin raid on Sunday the 3rd of September 1916. Now that should give you an idea of what today's video is about. There's a Zeppelin raid in 1916, which actually a bomb landed on this actual church and destroyed part of the vestry. But anyway, the actual reason we are here is that we are here to visit a final resting place. And that final resting place is of Frances Mary Louise Bamford, aged 26, and her sister, Eleanor Grace Bamford, aged 12. Right, that's it. I've had to get under a brolly. It's just, the rain's just too bad. So, but anyway, let's tell you a little bit about this. Right, there are two different types of German airship during the First World War. The first one is, everyone knows it, it's the Zeppelin. Now that was a large, very large aluminium framed airship, which was operated by the German Navy of the day. The second type of airship is a Schutt-Lanz airship, which is a wooden framed, smaller airship, and that was operated by the German Army of the day. Now there were two airships in this area on the night of the 2nd and 3rd of September 1916. One of them was shot down by William Leaf Robinson, who actually got the Victoria Cross for shooting it down. But anyway, what I'll do is I'll spin you around, we'll have a look around. It's a lovely little churchyard, even though the weather's miserable. It is a lovely little churchyard. I'll spin you around, we'll have a little look around the churchyard while I tell you about the night of the 2nd or 3rd of September 1916.
On the evening of Saturday the 2nd of September 1916, Germany launched the largest air raid of the Great War using a total of 16 airships. 14 aluminium-framed Zeppelins operated by the German Navy and 2 plywood-framed Schutt-Lanz aircraft operated by the German Army headed out across the North Sea to cross the English coast over East Anglia, from where they then headed to targets in North, the eastern counties and London. By mid-1916, England's defences against these air raids had been considerably strengthened since the first big raid a year earlier. Searchlights and anti-aircraft batteries now ring London. The Royal Flying Corps was flying regular patrols above 10,000 feet, and their aircraft were equipped with a recently developed ammunition for the Lewis guns. A mixture of 3 types of rounds designed specifically to puncture an airship's gas bags and then to ignite the released hydrogen gas. The first of the airships heading for London that night, a German Army Schutt-Lanz airship, the SL-11, commanded by Wilhelm Schramm, arrived over St Albans at 10 minutes past 1 in the morning of Sunday the 3rd of September. Schramm dropped bombs on the northern suburbs of London, and while heading further south his airship was picked up by the searchlights at Finsbury Park and Victoria Park. Turning back to the north over Tottenham and Enfield, the SO-11 was spotted by 2nd Lieutenant William Leaf Robinson in his BE-2C biplane. Leif Robinson pursued and engaged the SO-11 and eventually, with his 3rd drum of ammunition, succeeded in setting it on fire. The descent of the blazing SO-11 from a height of 2 miles to a field at Cuffley was not only seen by many Londoners, but also by the Navy Zeppelins then making their approach. The L-16, commanded by Eric Sommerfeld, was the nearest to the SO-11 when it burst into flames, and was seen by one of the RFC pilots who had been chasing SO-11. Sommerfeld headed off to the north to escape the glow from SO-11 before the planes could arrive at his position. To speed this escape, he jettisoned his bomb load as the L-16 was passing over Essendon, and though many of the bombs fell on open land, others caused considerable damage to the church and other buildings nearby. Just outside one of these houses, 2 daughters of the village blacksmith were mortally wounded. Later that day, thousands of sightseers flocked to Cuffley hoping to see the wreckage of SO-11, which was quickly removed by the authorities. On Monday, the newspapers claimed extensive reports which focused largely on the shooting down of the SO-11, a victory to be contrasted against the grim news from the battlefields of the Somme. A great air raid, 1 Zeppelin destroyed, wonderful spectacle in London, slight casualties was a heading to the leading article in the Times. That evening, an inquest into the deaths of the 16 crew of SO-11 was held at a Plough Inn, Cuffley, a short distance from the crash site. The coroner announced that the War Office had decided to give them a military funeral at the nearest cemetery, and this took place 2 days later at Potters Bar Cemetery. On Tuesday the 5th, the country's delight in this first shooting down of a German airship on English soil was heightened when the King awarded the Victoria Cross to Leif Robinson. The bomb that hit the church came down on a flat roof of the vestry, flattening it, wrecking the organ, making a huge hole in the south wall of the chancel and shattering the roof above the altar. The east window was severely damaged, as were other windows in the church, but the nave, aisles and tower all withstood the blast. The church clock stopped at 23 minutes past 2. Behind the rubble-strewn altar, the picture of the Last Supper was unharmed. Among the treasures destroyed in the vestry were the Baskerville Bible, presented to the church in 1791 by the Marquis of Salisbury, the remains of the old pulpit made in 1778, a table and 2 Chippendale chairs. The contents of the safe, including the register of the church plate, was undamaged. The church insurance had been reviewed a short time before, and confidence that the cost of repairs would be recovered allowed these to be set in motion quickly. The ruined parts of the church were restored close to their original state. 4 stained glass windows were replaced by their original makers using the drawings kept from 1883, rebuilding of the church, and the Willis organ was rebuilt. A stone set in the south wall of the vestry commemorates the reopening of the restored areas just 1 year later on Sunday the 2nd of September 1917. Francis and Eleanor Bamford were laid to rest in Essendon churchyard on the 13th of September 1916, which is where we are today.
Well, that's the story of the actual night of the 2nd and 3rd of September. But Francis and Eleanor, Francis being 26, Eleanor was only 12. And they were woken up by some loud noises, which obviously, coming from a small village back in those days, they weren't sure, but they were actually alarmed. Well, you would be, wouldn't you? So what they've done is they've put their dressing gowns on, or night dresses, whatever they wore in those days, and they've gone running out into the paddock behind their house. And their father was the local blacksmith. He had his own property, the paddock at the rear. So they ran out there just as a bomb from L-16 landed. Now, Francis was killed instantly, bad injuries to her stomach. But Eleanor, she survived briefly, really bad injuries to her leg. But even though she had it amputated, she still succumbed to her injuries, unfortunately. But what I'll do now is I'll do my best because this weather is really poor, really poor. I'll do my best now to get down and we'll have a look at the headstone. So I'll spin you around and we'll go and have a look at her grave, or their grave, together. Right, while walking down here, the story about the SL-11, the one that was shot down on that particular night, the Red Cross actually went and gathered as much of the wreckage as they possibly could, because they wanted to use the ruins to sell, to use the wreckage, sorry, to raise money to sell to aid in injured soldiers, which I thought was a really good. So something good did actually come out of that night. But right, their grave is just over here. I don't know how well this is going to come out on camera, because as I say, it is one of the older headstones. But here it is, just in front of us. And here it is. This is the final resting place of Francis and Eleanor Bamford. In affectionate and sympathetic memory of two sisters, Frances Mary Louise Bamford, aged 26 years, and Eleanor Grace Bamford, aged 12 years, whose lives were sacrificed in the course of a Zeppelin raid over this church and village on Sunday the 3rd of September 1916. We commend these thy servants into the hands of a faithful Creator and most merciful Saviour. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done in earth as it is in heaven. They shall not hurt nor destroy in... I can't read the rest, unfortunately, but there is a lot of writing on this. But that is the final resting place of Francis and Eleanor Bamford. A very sad story. Well, that was the final resting place of Francis and Eleanor. I'm having trouble holding this brolly because this wind is really strong. But actually, while we're in this churchyard, there is another grave in here which is quite interesting. So I'll briefly show you this before I end the video. It's just quite an interesting one. It's a tomb. Now I know I've seen it. I have seen it. It's over here somewhere. Alright, I think it's over there, just in front of us. What I'll do is I'll spin you around and I'll tell you a little bit about this tomb. Right, here it is, just in front of us here. Let's get under these trees. Right, this tomb here is of one of the reverends that used to be at this church. He was so afraid of being buried alive, apparently, that he demanded he be buried above ground and he should have a key in his tomb. So when he died, they respected his wishes. Inside this tomb, they put a loaf of bread, a bottle of wine and a key. And if you look on this end, there is there's a metal door, and I don't know if you'll be able to see it. Probably won't be able to see that because it's very dark. But there is actually a key holding that door. So I assume, literally by the fact that the door is still closed, that he wasn't buried alive. Right, well that's the end of this video. I hope you enjoyed it. I know it was a bit unusual. It was a different one from what I normally do, but I do like the interesting ones, you know that. If anyone that watches my videos know I like the interesting ones. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please give me a thumbs up. And if you haven't already, maybe consider subscribing. And if you do subscribe, don't forget to hit that notification bell. That way you will be notified every time I upload a new video. So that is it for now. I'll see you on the next one. Bye bye for now.